And we're on. Hello. Um, I was going to say good morning because it's Tuesday morning in Scotland as I'm recording this. But when you guys see it, it's going to be Friday evening somewhere in the Netherlands or probably online somewhere. Um, I understand that you've got a whiskey tasting tonight. Mark contacted me via Instagram and asked me if I could say a few words. I understand that one of the whiskies you're going to be tasting tonight is from the Infrequent Flyers range, specifically this Craigellachie 2007 PX Sherry Cask finish. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm literally going to be on here for 5, maybe 10 minutes. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But before we come on to the whiskey, I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to Infrequent Flyers and how we came to be. Um, so my name's Alistair Walker, and I started this business back in 2018. I've been working in the whisky industry since, let's see, I think it was January 1997 when I started at a company called Burn Stewart. I was just 22 years old at that point. This is one of my leftover souvenirs from Burn Stewart, my Scottish Leader water jug. So Burn Stewart was predominantly a blended whisky company, but it also owned Deanston and Tobermory Distillery, and later on acquired Bunnahabhain out in Islay. I was there for about 6 years, but the most interesting time I suppose that I spent in whisky was the chapter that followed that, which was when I joined Ben Riach Distillery. So Ben Riach Distillery Company had been set up in 2004. Um, it was set up by my dad, who's a guy called Billy Walker, and two business partners from South Africa. Um, Fantastic time to be involved in the whisky industry. We'd taken on a small-ish distillery that used to be owned by Chivas Brothers. Came with a fantastic inventory of stock, and we, as I say, this happened back in 2004. So this was probably 2 or 3 years before single malt entered this huge boom period, when the level of interest in whisky just started to skyrocket. So we were lucky to get in at the right time, and I was there for 12 years. So a lot of things happened in that time. 2008, we bought Glendronach Distillery up near Huntly. Amazing distillery for the use of sherry casks for maturation. And then 2010, we bought our own bottling hall just outside Edinburgh. And then in 2013, we purchased Craigellachie Distillery. Um, and I've got to be honest, I thought that's how I was going to spend the rest of my days working for that company. But then in 2015, we were approached by Brown Forman, big American company that owns Jack Daniels, and they made us an offer that was too good to refuse, and we ended up selling that business in 2016. And I left towards the end of 2016, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for the for the next few years. Um, I wanted to stay in the whiskey industry because it's a fantastic industry to be involved in. Um, Working with great liquid, but it's the people. What the whiskey business is about, the people. Uh, you meet some fantastic friends working in the industry. It's very sociable. There's a lot of camaraderie. Um, so I wanted to stay in the industry, and I didn't have the resource or the patience, but more so the resource to either buy a distillery or to build a distillery from scratch. Um, so I looked at independent bottling, and I thought that could be the way to go. Biggest challenge these days with independent bottling is actually trying to get access to stock, both good stock and also at the right price. in the last 5 years, maybe even 10 years, a lot of the distilleries that used to make stock available to independent bottlers and third party purchasers have actually tightened up in terms of supply because the category is doing so well that these guys want to keep that liquid for their own purposes. So I spent a few months just speaking to the people that I knew in the industry and finding out if it was going to be possible to do this. And the eventual conclusion was that it would be possible, but that it wasn't going to be particularly easy. Um, so I started the business in 2018. Started buying stock in the summer of 2018 once I'd got all my permissions from Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs in the UK. And it wasn't until the summer of 2019 when we actually did the first bottling. So we spent, the first 12 to 18 months just trying to buy stock. And then the process that follows on from that is then starting to re-rack your whiskey to make sure that your stock is in the appropriate type of wood. So yeah, as I say, that's kind of how I got involved in independent bottling. Um, we're just coming on to, I think, our 10th batch of single casks, which are going to be bottled later this month, hopefully. Um, so we've probably covered quite a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. The whiskey that that's part of your tasting tonight is from Craigellachie up in Speyside. Craigellachie is quite an old distillery. If you've been to Speyside, there's a 99% chance that you will have driven past Craigellachie at some point. It's just past behind the Craigellachie Hotel, which is very famous in Scotland. And as you head from there up to Dufftown, you'll pass Craigellachie on the left hand side. It's owned by Bacardi, which is Dewar's blended Scotch whisky. So it's owned by the Bacardi company. It's an old distillery. It's a very big distillery, 4 million litres per annum. That's probably one of the reasons why independent bottlers like myself managed to actually get some access to some of those casks. And this particular one, which is from 2007 vintage, this we bottled as part of our 8th batch in September 2021. This would have been the big heavily sherried expression from that batch. One of the things that I took from my time at Glendronach was an appreciation of the amazing influence that sherry casks can have on your whiskey. Predominantly sherry types like Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso. This Craigellachie has been finished in a PX sherry punch, and so it's a big cask, about 500 litres. Off the top of my head, you're probably looking at about a 12-month, maybe 14-month period in the PX cask. But to give you an idea of what this looked like before it went into PX, this bottle here is from our second batch. This was bottled back in towards the end of 2019. This is a Craigellachie 2007 from the same parcel as this one, but this one was bottled from the original cask, which was a refill hogshead. And if I put these side by side, I think you can see the influence, certainly in terms of colour, that the PX cask has had on the whisky. Now, I have to say, guys, it's Tuesday morning here, so it's a little bit early for me to be partaking of the whisky, but I'll have a little nose at it. I should mention, generally we bottle at cask strength. It's all natural colour. There's no chill filtration, and everything we do is single cask. So you're really getting the most unadulterated version of the whisky with infrequent flyers. So this one at cask strength is coming in at 58.3. 13 years old, and it's oops, excuse me, I'm doing this in one take, so we're not going to cut that bit out. It's very much what you'd expect from a PX sherry cask. You know, you're getting those the kind of treacle toffee coming through in the nose, very kind of toasted oak notes, brown sugars, that type of thing. These are the sort of flavours that you should get from PX cask. PX, you know, of all the sherry types, Pedro Jimenez is the one that has the highest, most concentrated sugar content. Um, so it has a huge influence on the whiskey. In terms of flavour profile, it's very much the classic sherry kind of flavour characteristics. It's the raisins and the sultanas. There's a lot of Morello cherries, dark chocolate. It's a very kind of rich, dense, chewy type of whiskey. It's almost got some liqueur style qualities. So you know, thick, unctuous, sweet, um, chocolatey, raisins, sultanas, all of these big, deep, intense flavours. But the other thing that's quite interesting about Craigellachie as a distillery, so you know we've talked a lot there about the wood influence, but when you actually look at the distillery influence, you want to go back and look at the one of the things that's quite unique about Craigellachie, or certainly quite special, is the fact that they still use the old style worm tub condensers, and the difference between the worm tub condenser and the more modern shell and tube condenser is the amount of copper that the whiskey or the spirit interacts with during that part of the process. With a shell and tube condenser, there's much more copper contact between the spirit and the copper, I suppose. Whereas there's a lot less copper involved with worm tub condensers. And what copper does, copper draws out a lot of those sulphurous components from a liquid, which you might think sounds like a good idea. Um, but there are good sulphurs and bad sulphurs, if you like. And when you're working with worm tub condensers, you're leaving some of those sulphurous compounds or components behind, and that's what leads to that very kind of heavy, weighty, sort of vegetal, very complex style of spirit that you get from distilleries like Craigellachie and Mortlach, etc. And if you leave that type of whiskey for a period of time, you get this fantastic evolution where those components turn into quite big, fruity, complex, full flavoured characteristics of the eventual dram. So don't always think of the word sulphur as a bad word. And like I say, with worm tubs, you've got that less copper influence, which gives you that very distinct style of spirit coming off the still. So what you've got with Craigellachie and this, particularly with this expression, you've got that really big, heavy, vegetal sort of spirit coming through. It's been in a refill hogshead for most of its life, and then we've transferred it into a big PX sherry puncheon for the last 12 to 14 months. So you're bringing in that huge PX sherry cask influence. I think it's fantastic. I love that style of whiskey. And that's kind of, I don't want to take up too much time because I know you've got another 5 or 6 whiskies to try. But I suppose that's a little spotlight or just shining a light on the type of things that we're doing with Infrequent Flyers. We've got a massive program of re-racks. We've just finished our 9th re-rack campaign. And what we're doing there is we're taking casks that we've already purchased, and we're then redeploying the liquid into different types of wood, and that can be sherry, PX, Oloroso. It could be port hogsheads. It could be virgin oak barrels, which we use a lot of. It could be Sauterne, Marsala. We've done some Italian wines and some French wines. What else? Barolo, rye. Chinkapin oak, dark rum casks. So pretty much anything that we are allowed by the Scotch Whisky Association to use to mature whisky, we are doing a bit of that. And what I'm trying to do there is to take these whiskies in different directions in terms of their flavour profile, and build some variety into the inventory. Um, and I think if you look at the things that we've released previously, and keep an eye on what we're doing going forward, we hope to strike a balance between some original casks where the focus is on the distillery character, but also a big focus on the influence of wood on the whiskey. So we're doing a huge amount of finishing and re-racking, and that's the kind of thing that you'll see a lot of with the infrequent flyers releases. The other thing I should mention before I go, um, there's only four outside the UK. We sell to 8 different countries. 4 of them are in Europe, and that's the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, and Italy. So fortunately, a small amount of each cask does find its way to the Netherlands. Our importer in the Netherlands is a company called Kintra, also known as Wagging Finger. So if you're trying to find out how to get access to any of our whiskies in the Netherlands, just go onto the Kintra website and contact them directly, and they'll be able to help. So I hope you are all able to understand my Glaswegian dialect, and I hope I wasn't speaking too quickly. Um, Thank you for the time. I hope it's not too long, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the tasting. Have a great Friday night and a great weekend, and enjoy the Craigellachie flange. Cheers, guys.